All right, buckle up because today we're going deep into some pretty wild history, the CIA and LSD.
Oh, yeah, definitely wild.
We're going to really dig into this M-Culture project using The Search for the Manchurian Candidate by John Marks, specifically chapters 6 through 10.
Sounds like a plan.
Think of it like we're piecing together a puzzle, right? And what we're going to see is how the CIA, in their quest to control people's minds, might have actually accidentally set the stage for this whole counterculture movement that was all about, well, freedom.
It's really a fascinating intersection, with everything going on in the 50s,
Yeah.
like anxieties about the Cold War, the rise of psychology,
Right.
even the early seeds of that counterculture.
All kind of swirling around together. So, okay.
Exactly.
So picture this. Early 1950s, Cold War is really heating up, and the CIA is looking for any advantage they can get over the Soviets.
Right?
And then comes LSD, this potent new drug that seemed like it could hold the key to mind control. At least that's what they thought.
That was the hope.
And the CIA's technical services staff, the TSS they called it, created MKUltra to explore this very possibility.
Yeah.
And what's really crazy is that they were actually ahead of the curve on LSD research.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Publicly, scientists were just starting to understand LSD, but the CIA was already deep into testing it,
Deep into it.
both in the lab and even on themselves.
View on themselves.
Yeah, leaders like Sidney Gottlieb, they were experimenting with LSD,
It's hard to believe, but yeah.
like in the office,
Wow.
at safe houses.
In the office, yeah.
They even had a psychiatrist in Boston they were working with.
I mean, can you imagine the people in charge of intelligence during the Cold War
Right.
tripping on an experimental drug?
It's mind-boggling, right? And this wasn't just about, gathering information.
Right.
This was about controlling minds for espionage.
Espionage.
They were really concerned about controlling the supply of LSD, too.
Uh-huh.
Like, they were worried about Sandoz, that Swiss company, had the monopoly at the time.
Right.
And they went to great length to secure stockpiles. They even encouraged domestic production by Eli Lilly.
I mean, they were pulling out all the stops.
They were, but the funny thing is, even with all that effort, reliable mind control, still a no-go.
Yeah, LSD was just too unpredictable.
Really?
One CIA operative, after his first LSD experience,
Okay.
he talked about this profound shift in perspective.
Wow.
He saw beauty in everyday things,
Yeah.
like cracks in the sidewalk.
Mm.
He felt this sense of, global interconnectedness.
So it changed his worldview.
It did, but it didn't turn him into some programmable agent.
Interesting.
Yeah, they weren't switching identities.
It seems like their mind control attempts were hitting a dead end.
Basically, yeah, LSD just didn't work that way.
Mm.
It amplified existing personality traits, but sometimes in really unsettling ways.
Really?
So for those prone to paranoia,
Oh, no.
LSD just made those fears worse, not better.
So the opposite of what they wanted. But instead of, scrapping the project, they kind of doubled down, right?
Sadly, yeah.
And they made this really troubling shift.
They started testing LSD on people who didn't know what was going on.
That's messed up.
Really ethically questionable.
For sure.
It started with their own colleagues,
Like what?
Like there's this story of a CIA employee who was given LSD in his coffee without knowing.
Oh, my God.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
He ended up freaking out and running out of the office.
That's terrifying.
Totally. And then things get even darker with the case of Frank Olson.
Frank Olson, yeah, a scientist working at Fort Detrick.
Right, on biological warfare.
He became a victim of this whole reckless experimentation.
He was at this retreat with some CIA colleagues, including Gottlieb, at Deep Creek Lodge in Maryland.
Okay.
And somebody, we know as Gottlieb, spiked his drink with LSD.
Wow.
And after that, his mental state just went downhill.
Oh, no.
Yeah, deep paranoia, depression.
It's heartbreaking.
It is. And here's where the CIA's actions get even worse.
What did they do?
They didn't send him to a psychiatrist, someone who could actually help.
No.
Instead, they sent him to a CIA-affiliated allergist in New York.
And an allergist.
An allergist who, by the way, had a history of working with LSD.
So they weren't really concerned about his well-being.
No, this was all about damage control.
It's just awful.
It is. And tragically, Olson died just days later, falling from a hotel window.
Oh, my God.
And the CIA went straight into cover-up mode.
Of course.
Olson's family was kept in the dark for decades about what really happened.
It's a truly horrific story, and it shows how far the CIA was willing to go.
Yeah. Disregarding any kind of ethics.
Yeah.
Tossing aside people's well-being, all in pursuit of mind control.
And it didn't even stop there.
No, it didn't.
Despite this tragedy,
They just kept going.
they continued this clandestine testing, and they even shifted their focus to even more vulnerable people.
Yeah, they set up these safe houses,
Safe houses.
specifically designed for testing LSD on people who didn't know they were being dosed.
This is getting scary.
It gets worse.
So these safe houses, they became like this whole other dark chapter in the culture story, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, a chilling testament to how reckless they'd become.
And that's where George White comes in.
Right. George White, former OSS agent, narcotics agent,
Interesting character.
they're flamboyant, a bit of a rogue, total contrast to the scientists in MKUltra.
So not exactly your typical CIA guy.
Nope, but he was exactly what they needed for these covert operations.
So the CIA gave White funding and equipment for these safe houses.
They did.
One in New York, one in San Francisco.
Surveillance equipment, the whole 9 yards.
Wow. And White recruited the subjects and did the testing.
And remember, this is all about unwitting testing.
These people had no clue they were being given LSD.
None whatsoever.
So who were these unwitting subjects? Who were they targeting?
They went after what they called marginal individuals.
Marginal.
Prostitutes, addicts, people who were less likely to report to the authorities.
Oh.
People already caught up in a world of drugs and deception.
Oh. So they figured these people wouldn't attract attention.
Exactly. Their claims wouldn't be taken seriously.
It's pretty chilling, when you think about it.
It is.
Exploiting vulnerable people to advance their agenda.
Yeah, it really shows you their mindset at the time.
So tell me about these safe houses.
Okay, so take the San Francisco safe house, for example.
Okay.
White would use prostitutes to lure men back to the apartment, slip them LSD, and then observe.
That sounds like something out of a spy movie.
But this was real life.
With real consequences.
The place was rigged with surveillance equipment, courtesy of the CIA,
What kind of equipment?
two-way mirrors, microphones.
Wow.
They even had a portable toilet that allowed for observation.
No way.
Yep, all carefully orchestrated to study LSD's effects on these unsuspecting victims.
So they were really committed to this.
Oh yeah, and it wasn't just LSD that interested them.
Really?
They explored other mind-altering substances too.
It seems like they were just searching for anything that would give them an advantage.
They were desperate.
So what else did they try?
Knockout drops, aphrodisiacs,
Wow.
even things to cause discomfort like stink bombs and diarrhea inducers.
Diarrhea inducers.
They had another safe house up in Marin County just for testing this stuff.
It's almost absurd when you think about it.
Yeah, it gets pretty wild.
These CIA scientists trying to weaponize stink bombs?
They even tried spraying LSD from an aerosol can at a party once.
What?
Luckily for everyone involved, the wind wasn't cooperating that day.
That could have been disastrous.
For sure.
So it sounds like a lot of these experiments were pretty haphazard.
Yeah, they were really grasping at straws at that point.
Driven by desperation.
You could say that.
But ultimately, all their efforts were futile, right?
Pretty much.
MKUltra came crashing down.
It did.
An Inspector General's report exposed all the ethical and security risks.
That was the beginning of the end.
So what did the report say?
It highlighted the dangers of unwitting testing, the potential for lawsuits, and the huge blow to the CIA's reputation if the program ever went public.
I bet they were worried about that.
Oh, they were terrified.
And here's the real irony of it all. After all the testing, all the money they spent, all the ethical lines they crossed, they never actually found a reliable way to control minds with LSD.
Nope, their big dreams of weaponizing LSD. Total bust.
So it was a failure on all fronts.
Pretty much. But here's the thing. Their research had all these unintended consequences.
Oh, I bet.
Consequences that rippled way beyond their control.
That's what we're going to get into next time.
That's right. We'll explore how the CIA's quest for control may have actually paved the way for the psychedelic counterculture.
It's kind of a crazy paradox, isn't it?
It really is. We'll dig into that in the next part.
Yeah, wait.
Should be interesting.
So it's almost like, they planted a seed and ended up with this huge forest fire.
Bit of an overcorrection, yeah.
How did the CIA, trying to control minds with LSD, end up contributing to this whole cultural movement all about, well, freedom, right?
It's important to remember that their research wasn't happening in some vacuum, right?
Right.
They relied on this network of scientists, lots of them working at, universities, medical institutions.
So there was a chance for this super secret research to leak out.
Yeah.
Into the wider world.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
So some researchers, maybe not fully grasping what the CIA was aiming for, they might have shared LSD with colleagues or presented findings at conferences, things like that.
I see. So it kind of spread organically.
In a way, yeah.
Huh.
There's even a case of Timothy Leary, huge figure in the counterculture.
Yeah, I know Timothy Leary.
He got fascinated by LSD after reading a study that was, guess what, funded by the CIA.
No way.
Yeah.
So wouldn't that, like, make the CIA's efforts to control LSD totally backfire?
It's pretty paradoxical, right?
Surely.
The very organization trying to control this thing might have actually helped it spread into a movement that, was all about rejecting authority, embracing personal exploration.
It's mind-blowing.
And it wasn't just the researchers either.
Oh, yeah. What about the people they were testing on?
Remember those unsuspecting test
The
subjects?
ones who had no idea what they were taking?
Exactly. Some of them, after their experiences with LSD, they became like early adopters,
Oh, wow.
helping spread the word.
So in a way, the counterculture's embrace of LSD could be seen as like a pushback against the CIA's attempts at control.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it, for sure.
Okay, so I want to shift gears a bit.
Sure.
Because I read about something else that I thought was really interesting.
What's that?
The CIA's research on magic mushrooms.
Ah, yes. Their foray into the world of fungi.
It sounds like they were desperate to try anything, you know?
Well, they were looking for anything that could give them an edge.
Right?
And they had this idea that maybe, just maybe,
Yeah.
these naturally occurring substances, especially ones with a history of, spiritual or ritualistic use.
Like magic mushrooms.
Exactly. They thought those might hold the key to mind control.
So they were trying to weaponize magic mushrooms.
In essence, yes. Driven by Cold War anxieties, the prospect of a naturally occurring mind control substance was just too tempting to ignore.
It sounds crazy, though.
Oh, what?
How did they even begin to, search for these mushrooms? Especially given that they grow in these remote locations and only at certain times of the year.
It was definitely a challenge.
I bet.
They had to rely on rumors and legends, stories about these magic mushrooms used by indigenous cultures in Mexico for centuries.
Okay, so like ancient wisdom kind of thing.
Yeah, the Aztecs, for example, called them Teonacatl,
Tenonaketo.
which means God's flesh.
Wow.
And they believed these mushrooms had supernatural powers.
So the CIA, hearing these legends, they decided to try and harness the power of God's flesh for their own purposes.
That's right. The possibility of a naturally occurring mind control substance was just too tantalizing to pass up.
So what did they do?
They sent scientists and agents down to remote Mexican villages, interviewing locals, trying to track down these elusive mushrooms.
Wow, like a real-life treasure hunt.
Exactly. But they weren't the only ones on the trail.
Really? Who else was looking for these magic mushrooms?
A banker named R. Gordon Wasson, also an amateur mycologist, he was obsessed with these things.
A banker looking for magic mushrooms.
Yeah, it's quite a story.
I bet.
He spent years searching for them, and he was actually the first outsider to experience their effects in modern times.
Wow, how do you manage that?
He participated in a traditional ceremony led by this Mazatec curandera named Maria Sabina in Oaxaca, Mexico.
So he went right to the source.
He did, and the CIA, they caught wind of this.
Mm-hmm.
They even sent a chemist named James Moore to join one of Wasson's expeditions,
So they had their man on the inside.
hoping to learn more, maybe even isolate the active ingredient.
Did it work?
Well, unfortunately for the CIA, Moore's experience in Mexico wasn't quite what they'd hoped for.
Oh no, what happened?
He didn't really connect with the ritualistic aspects of the mushroom experience, and he actually got pretty sick during his trip.
Oh man, not a good trip.
Not at all. It seems he was a bit out of his element.
I can imagine.
But here's the biggest twist.
What's that?
While the CIA was struggling down in Mexico, Albert Hofmann, the Swiss chemist who discovered LSD,
Oh wow, the LSD guy.
he successfully isolated and synthesized the active ingredient in magic mushrooms.
So they were beaten to the punch again.
Yep, just like with LSD.
Unbelievable.
Their hopes of controlling the supply of this newly discovered psychedelic, which Hoffman named psilocybin.
Psilocybin.
Those hopes went up in smoke as Sandoz started producing and distributing it for research.
It's like a cosmic joke.
Kinda, right.
The CIA, after all that effort, outsmarted by the same chemist who discovered LSD.
That's right.
But they didn't give up on psilocybin entirely, did they?
Not a chance. They were determined to find a way to weaponize it.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
How?
They conducted experiments, mostly on unsuspecting prisoners.
Seriously?
They looked into its potential as a truth serum, a mind control tool, even as a way to create chaos and confusion.
Did they find what they were looking for? Was psilocybin the answer to their mind-controlled dreams?
Nope, not at all.
Another dead end.
Just like with LSD, psilocybin turned out to be way too unpredictable and uncontrollable.
Makes sense.
You can't really turn The mystical experience, the spiritual insights,
Yeah.
the profound sense of interconnectedness
Right.
that these substances often trigger, you can't turn that into a weapon.
So their quest for control ended in failure yet again.
You got it.
But as we've talked about, their research, it often had these unintended consequences.
Right.
Did their work with psilocybin also play a role in the rise of the counterculture?
It's hard to say for sure,
I bet.
but it's certainly possible, right?
Yeah.
Their research, along with the work of, people like Wasson and Hoffman,
Uh-huh.
it brought psilocybin into the public eye.
Right.
And as the counterculture started experimenting with all kinds of mind-altering substances,
Yeah.
it's very likely that psilocybin found its way into that mix.
So the CIA, fixated on control, might have actually helped spread these very substances that challenged that control.
It's a wild thought, isn't it?
It is. It's like this crazy paradox.
This whole story, it really raises important questions about unintended consequences,
For sure.
especially when you're talking about scientific research done in secret, driven by agendas of power and control.
Yeah, it makes you think. Yeah, it really makes you think about those ripple effects,
It does.
especially when actions are taken in secret like that.
For sure. The CIA story with LSD and psilocybin, it's a powerful reminder that knowledge, especially about, powerful substances like that,
Yeah.
it can have some pretty unforeseen consequences. And the intentions behind using that knowledge, those are crucial.
It's easy to think about this whole period, the Cold
Yeah.
War paranoia, those secret experiments, as something that's like
Right.
distant and irrelevant to us now. But
Yeah.
are there any lessons we can learn from all this? I mean, for today.
I think there are. Yeah, it really underscores the dangers of unchecked power
Right.
and the absolute need for transparency, especially when it comes to, government agencies and scientific research.
Yeah.
The fact that the CIA was able to do all these experiments for so long in total secrecy,
Right.
that's a big red flag.
It is. It raises questions about accountability,
Absolutely.
oversight,
Uh-huh.
and it also kind of speaks to the enduring power of these psychedelics, wouldn't you say?
It does, yeah.
The CIA's obsession with them, seeing them as both, this potential weapon and a threat,
Right.
it suggests something about their transformative potential.
Exactly. They were clearly onto something, even if they couldn't really wrap their heads around it.
They just went about it the wrong way.
Yeah, and what's interesting is how differently psychedelics are viewed today,
Yeah.
both in research and just in culture in general.
Uh-huh.
There's a growing appreciation for their potential therapeutic benefits.
Right, like treating things like depression and anxiety. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, even addiction.
It's a far cry from the CIA trying to weaponize them.
It really is.
It makes you wonder what could have been
Hmm.
if the CIA had, taken a different approach,
Yeah.
focused on healing and understanding rather than control and manipulation.
What if they had used all those resources to explore the positive potential of these substances? It's a fascinating thought.
It is. It's like, imagine what kind of world we'd be living in if they had it.
A very different world, I'm sure.
So we've done this deep dive into the CIA's secret LSD experiments, their whole pursuit of magic mushrooms,
Right.
their, I guess, accidental role in the rise of the counterculture.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. What are some key takeaways here? What should we be thinking about after unearthing all of this?
Well, I think it's a reminder to always critically examine those in power.
Okay.
Question assumptions. Be cautious of anyone who's trying to control or manipulate, especially when it comes to something as powerful and transformative as psychedelics.
So it's kind of a cautionary tale in a way.
It is, but it's also a story about, the resilience of the human spirit.
Okay.
It highlights our enduring curiosity, our drive to explore, and the often unpredictable consequences of our actions.
Yeah, that's for
It
sure.
really prompts you to reflect,
It does.
and hopefully it encourages us to think differently about the world.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the, I guess you could say, strange and fascinating world of the CIA and LSD.
My pleasure.
We'll leave you with this final thought. Considering the long history of psychedelics, in traditional cultures and now modern society,
Yeah.
could it be that these substances, rather than being tools for control, are actually gateways to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the universe? Something to think about as you continue your own explorations.